This is the Founders Catalyst. Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Founders Catalyst with myself, Steve Mellor, and Lee Povey. Lee, how are we doing?
Fancy seeing you here, Steve. What a shock.
What a
it's
shock.
Me and you again.
Same bar, same town. Listen, we've just come right off a conversation. We didn't take a break. You would have all taken a couple of week breaks, but we didn't take a break. We're coming fresh off our conversation about just simply defining performance and what that means in really all worlds. We didn't make it too specific to founders, to be honest. And I think that's actually going to serve everybody to be a little bit more relatable in that regard. But what we want to do now is just maybe get into more application mode, and specifically towards leaders that are operating and in positions of influence within their business. And I'm curious, mate, when you think about just your world and how you operate the world that is Lee Povey, because I think this is a very important way for us to start looking at ourselves right smack in the mirror. Here we are as coaches. We work with leaders. We guide people on how to be better leaders in the work that we do. How good are we? How good are we at leading? What are some of our principles that allow us to show up? So, Lee, tell me, why is it you're so capable to do what it is you do? How do you lead the world that is Lee Povey?
Oh, Steve. Steve.
There's a chance for you to give us some humble brags here if you want to, or you can immediately just go to,
I'm going to go straight to being a self-effacing Brit and put myself down.
There we go.
I think genetically, I was born to lead. I was chatting to my mum. I can't remember the thing. I did some kind of process thing, and I was chatting to my mum about it. And she recounted a situation. We were 8 years old, and we were at the airport. There's me, my mum, my auntie, my brother, my sister. And, we got all our bags, and they're struggling. My mum is struggling with all these bags, and my auntie had a back injury. So it was really my mum that was trying to cope with it all. And at 8 years old, I just took control. And I said, right, you're going to the top of the escalator. I'll be at the bottom of the escalator. I'm going to put the bags on the bottom of the escalator to you so that you can grab them at the top, and we'll just send them up, and we'll just have this little process, and then I'll come up and I'll help you put them on the trolley, and away we'll go. I think my brain sees I know my brain sees complex situations and finds simple solutions to them. And I feel comfortable sharing that information, taking control, taking responsibility. I feel comfortable in the position of responsibility. However, just because I have a genetic predisposition to be in positions of responsibility and to see the simple solutions to complex tasks doesn't mean that makes me a good leader. They're very, very different things. That means I'm capable in leadership situations, but being a good leader is so much more than that. And to begin with, my leadership was, I will take control. I'll do it better than you'll do it. And often I would leave people feeling small and belittled, and that they weren't good enough. And I think I got something from that. I got something that made me feel more powerful and stronger when I was really feeling vulnerable and insecure. And the journey for me has been taking that genetic ability and knowing when to switch it on and when to switch it off, and knowing how to adapt it and mold it to the different people I work with. And a big transformation for my leadership has been, instead of thinking everybody needs to fit into me, I believe now the most gifted leaders adapt themselves, change themselves, mold themselves to best support the people that they are around. That for me is world-class leadership. You look at somebody in your team and you think, how do I best communicate with this person to get the most from them? How do I best lead this person to get the most from them? Are they somebody that needs a kick up the arse? Are they somebody that needs an arm around the shoulder? Are they somebody that needs a lot of compliments and positive reinforcement? Or are they somebody that needs occasional, very specific compliments? Mm-hmm. I'm the latter. If you gave me a lot of small compliments and reinforcement, I'm not going to believe you. I'm going to be like, shut up. It feels performative. However, if you stop and give me very specific and actionable feedback, whether it be an opportunity or whether it be an acknowledgement, that's going to land on me, and I'm probably going to remember that for a long time.
Yeah.
So leadership for me has changed quite a lot from that genetic component of, okay, I'm just comfortable taking control, to what am I going to do with that ability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's the same as anything. You can look at great sports people, and we've all been there. I went to a kid with a school, Nozad, his name was, who could do any sport. He was a county tennis player. He swam. He was a fantastic rugby player. Yeah, he never really excelled in any one thing because he lacked just that last bit of application. He was so naturally good at stuff. He got to such a high level without really having to try that hard that he never, I believe, never fully learned how to really push himself, because he would just be better than the rest of us without trying. And you'd see this guy and he'd just try something and you'd be like, how the hell is he so good? I think often the people that truly make it are the ones that were one step down from those absolutely gifted freaks who had to think, how can I be better? And that's my cycling career. I was not the most genetically gifted. I had a reasonable level of gift, but I was not the most genetically gifted. However, what that meant is I had to look at every single part of it and think, how do I get more optimized? And to follow on from our last conversation, and please go back and check out the last episode, when we're talking about optimal performance, I had to be the most optimized to win. And if I optimized everything, I could absolutely win. However, if I didn't, somebody more talented was going to come and beat me.
Yep. And there's something in that brings us back to this notion of leadership falling under this performance umbrella. To your point of the leader that you were, the leader you've become, that shift came from a willingness to create an outside perspective, to see it from the perspective of others. When we lead selfishly, when we lead because, hey, I know better, I don't need help, we're deciding in that moment to push performance to one side. We don't need to be performed. We don't need to perform. Sorry, we don't need to be assessed. There are no standards that we're having to meet because this is my business. This is my world. You're just fortunate to be a part of it, said employee. And when we step into that space, as you say, what does it mean for me to optimize this relationship? How can I actually look at my workload? And you shared this in the last episode. If my value is what I claim it is within this business, if my role here is 4 to 5x that of every other person's role, because without me in this company doesn't happen. There's probably a ton of truth to that, and that's fine. But with that information, how are we actually saying, okay, then how do I ensure that I'm optimizing my time and positioning other people to be successful and do what it is I hired them to do in the first place, which is take away some of these things that I don't need to be doing all the time. And I'm right where you are with your business too. I'm in this really exciting phase. By the time this episode's come out, the business will be renamed, retitled, all this kind of thing, because of the growth I've experienced and the amazing clients that I have and the way they've educated me on what I do and how I do it. I am really trying to work on the business right now in a way to where I can be this central figure. Obviously, the business doesn't exist without me, but I can be a central figure where most paths and most roads come toward and come away from. But at the same time, how am I relinquishing some control? How am I relinquishing some ownership through that back and forth collaboration with people that I surround myself with, so that I can actually start to position myself as the coach that I am, and reminding myself I got into this to be a coach. The way any founder out there listening to this, why did you start your business in the first place? Why did you want to have the ownership and the leadership that you now have? Was it so that you could tell people what to do? Or was it so that you could provide and deliver upon a specific value, specific talent, a specific set of expertise, but be able to do it from a more autonomous position? I'd like to believe it's more the latter, but we forget that, don't we, mate? We forget that through the journey of building the business and receiving the success. and going through all these other areas in which we perform, and we get this feedback that, oh wow, how great we're doing, how well we're doing, if you will.
The reason I became a founder and opened my own first business, my real estate business, because I realized I didn't work well for other people. Arrogantly, I thought I could do it better than them. When I look back now, actually, the regional director I had at Fox and Sons, the first real estate agency I worked for, he was great. and I often think of him, and I learned so much from him about leadership. However, I thought I could do it better. And in some ways I was right, I could. Now, when I look at why do I do this? Why do I not work with other, why do I not work for a coaching company? Why do I have my own company? It's because I want to be able to provide something agile and very bespoke and not formulaic. It's really important to me that I meet every founder where they're at with what they need, and I adapt my coaching in a way that best supports them. And I might bring in colleagues of mine. We were talking about this before we started the session off air about, I'm not the best coach for everybody. You're not the best coach for everybody. I have colleagues that I bring in. You have colleagues that you bring in for different types of people that we might not be best for. My type of person is that super smart founder, typically grappling with this issue right now of how do I let go, typically running a company of 20 to 30, 40 people, which is about what one founder can really have full control over before they need to start giving up more and more control to other people and empowering more people. And how do they step into that next level of leadership, which is the letting go stage of needing to know every single aspect of their business and every single aspect of what everybody in their business is doing, because that limits growth. Like, the business is limited to a certain size because there's just so much information that one human being can deal with. And there's that cracking open of that person and them stepping into their vulnerabilities and their fear of, oh my God, what happens to the business if I don't know everything that everybody's doing? What happens when I have to trust other people? I know this has been a difficult one for me. I struggle to trust other people. I would always prefer to be in a position of strength than in a position of vulnerability, because I'm putting my own emotional well-being, safety, physical well-being and safety, and financial well-being and safety in the hands of somebody else. And that's where great leaders step into and through their emotional stuff, as they learn they have to let go, they have to trust other people. Even more than trusting other people, they have to know that other people have to have their process. They're going to need to be coached. Something I often work on with founders is they'll say to me, Lee, I don't get it. Why does this person not see it like I see it? Why can they not see the opportunities? And there can be a multitude of reasons. One, you're just straight, flat out gifted at seeing. Your gift is seeing the things that other people can't see. And if you walk through the world expecting everybody else to see the things that you see, you're just going to have continual disappointment and frustration. However, these people have other gifts. They might be able to execute better than you. They might be more detail-oriented than you are. They might be able to be better at maintaining a consistent, balanced workload, where I find founders can be crazy and kill themselves and work really hard and then need to take a break or run away for a bit because they become so overwhelmed. So we all have these different gifts. And I think great leadership is stepping into, as I said at the beginning of this, how do I best meet that person where they're at? And then how do I invest in that person? How do I put effort into coaching them so that their performance, coming back to our key word here, our key premise, is how can their performance improve? Well, they need to be coached. Leaders are coaches too. Why do I do what I do? Because I love leadership. I love the themes of leadership. I love the concept of leadership. I love stepping into the world as a leader. I think the world needs more healthy leaders. I think we have a lot of unhealthy leadership right now that is based on personal gain, not on how do we raise all of society. And my way of dealing with that is working with as many leaders as I can and helping them be better versions of themselves so that they empower the people around them. And one of my great coaching friends has a company called Ripple Effect Coaching. And that's what I believe in. We create these great leaders. They create other great leaders. They create great leaders. And this wave of high quality, exceptional leadership just leaks out everywhere. And part of that is this ability to go, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know the answer to this problem. I need support.
Yeah, and that's to go back to where we finished from the previous episode. That's where the challenge and the fun comes in. Is as a leader, is that you get to show up every day as a leader with this openness in your mindset of what will I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? What about the way in which I lead, about the way I work with my people? Because something that is really coming through here is that leadership isn't, it's not based on the performance of your company. You know, if you're allowing yourself to just say, if my company's successful, that must mean I'm leading this company well. That's too simple. It's too black and white, and there's nothing about leadership that's black and white. It's incredibly gray. Every leader is different. They come in different shapes and forms of sizes. Leadership should be authentic, just to be clear. And I think that's where the fun and the challenge in the performance aspect of leadership really comes in, is finding, hey, authentically, who the heck am I as a leader? I've read 20 books on leadership. I've gone to every single one of John Maxwell's conferences, and for the life of me, none of this feels natural. None of it. And it's just like, okay, well, stop trying to do it his way. Try sit down and get curious about what it is you bring to the table that could be expanded upon, that you're not seeing right now. That's where coaching comes in. And I think that is where every leader that I work with today, that's where I always get so excited on their behalf. And typically that emotion is not shared at first. Usually when they make it clear that there is this element that they're becoming aware of about their leadership, and they're feeling very attacked in that moment, and they're feeling very less than in that moment, I sort of perk up in my seat, and I'm just like, all right, this is great. This is awesome news, you know?
Yeah, because we're like, this is the gain area. Let's go, buddy. This is the edge. Here we go. And I want to take you back to something, Steve. Sorry to interrupt you there, because I think it's really important. I want to take you back to authenticity. Can you explain to me what that word means?
So authenticity to me, I'm really curious to get your insight in this, because I speak on stage about this a lot. And so I studied the word. And authenticity is not, I am who I am, I get to be who I want to be. That's not authenticity. Authenticity is, it comes with an abundance mindset. It comes with there's a version of me that I can aspire toward, that I can work toward, and my willingness to do so will actually allow me to step into authenticity. And I think that it's another one of those words, sadly, that through media, social media, whatever you want to call it, it's been butchered, it's been ruined, it's been falsely defined. Authenticity is a word that comes with challenge and fun. It does. At the heart of it, it's not you cut it out and you pop it in. It's not that simple. So the version, for me at least, that's how I define it when I speak to audiences today. It's not what you formed into, it's what you're forming into.
Interesting. I think to me the word means showing up truly as who I am. Mm-hmm. And while you were speaking, what was coming to mind for me was, when I come into a group, there's two ways that I can enter a group. I can enter a group as, I'm Lee Povey, let me show you how smart I am. And then I can come into a group as, I'm Lee Povey and I'm here to learn, and I'm curious as to what this group is going to uncover about me. I'm curious as to what I'm going to take away from this. The second one is me in my authenticity. The first one is me with this shield on of, I want to be liked. And my belief, mistakenly, is if I show up as the know-it-all, people like me more because I'm bringing some value. And I don't need to bring value. My value is to just be there and be a participant. I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. So I think for me, that authenticity is that second version of me, which is the version of, I might not know the answers. I might not be able to support other people in the group. I might not be able to help them. I might be the dumbest person in this room, and that's okay. I don't have to perform.
And that's I think the beauty of what we're both saying here is, in many ways, we're saying the same thing, is that, and I love that we've actually found a way to define it differently on the surface, but say a very similar thing, because that ability to show up as your truest self, your most organic and natural self, is something you have to work on every single day. It is. Now that we've told you, that doesn't mean that you're going to walk into work after lunch today and just suddenly, okay, that's it. They told me to be just myself and just be comfortable in myself, and that's it. Now I'm figured it out. No, like, that starts with a single step towards that today. Like, what does one single step look like? Maybe that is just a private conversation that you have with someone where you show a little bit more of your natural self for the first time. And that is you stepping into authenticity. You're not ready to do it in front of the whole company. You're not ready to do it in the next team meeting. But you are at least willing to bring it into the workplace with you, even if it stays in your bag all day and you only bring it out in that one interaction. That's a step. That's what I was going back to before, of like, instead of assuming that you are what you are and you've been dealt the hand you've been dealt with and that's what it is, that desire to keep forming into a version of you, that shows a willingness to keep showing up with that authenticity daily.
And to know where you're going to go, you have to know where you've come from. So you have to be aware of who you are first. The most powerful work I believe I do with my clients, and the most powerful work I've done with the coaches that I have worked with personally and in groups, is this adaptation work, which is, I'm born with certain genetic personality traits, I meet the world, and then I adapt to how the world treats me. And now we're going to get into another popular buzzword, vulnerability. And the vulnerability for me is to let go of these shields I've built up that got me through my childhood, got me through my school system, got me through my early adulthood, to what you just said, which is getting back to my true self. I have certain genetic gifts. The world deserves those gifts. I've got to let go of the armor, the shielding, the behavioral adaptations that I've taken on to get through the early part of my life, to step into what I'm truly capable of, to own the gifts that I have, to be comfortable. And, you know, the way that I would get seen being great at sport or being smart, they don't serve me anymore. Nobody cares how good at sport I am. No one cares whether I win a go-kart race or not, apart from me. And even myself now, I care more about how I drive. My end of my cycling career, I cared more about how I optimize my ability than the end result. Because I couldn't, if somebody else turned up that was just flat out better than me, there's nothing that I can do about that. However, if I perform to the best of my abilities and I step away and I go, that was it. That's what I'm truly capable of. If they beat me, so what? I've done the best I can, and I am truly comfortable with that. Same in go-kart racing now. If I step off that track and go, that was it. That's everything that Lee has right now, and someone beats me, fantastic, good on them.
Yeah.
I still feel just as fulfilled. It's me I'm competing with. And I just like bringing myself to others to compare myself so that I can keep working on myself. Right, where is it I need to improve? Where am I losing out? And I think the vulnerability now for me is not having to have all the answers. Not having to have all the answers as a coach. Yeah. I'll say to clients now in a session, I don't know where we should go now. What do you think? And I'll trust their intuition. I'll trust what they believe they need for themselves. Or I'll just reflect to them, this is what I heard you say. What do you think? Where do we want to go with this? I get more and more impressed by people who lead from that space, who use the room around them to support themselves, rather than they step in with, hey, I'm in charge and this is how we do this. It's a very stunted form of leadership that holds back performance. We want to make the most of everything that we have at our disposal, the talent of the people in the room. And just to come back and emphasize what you said, there's a famous David Bowie quote, and because I am not a great quote rememberer, I'm going to hugely butcher this. The premise of it is, though, we spend our entire life getting back to who we were born as. We keep stripping back all of these learned behaviors to get back to who we truly are, our most authentic self. And I'm finally feeling like that's where I'm getting to now. So I don't have to walk into a new group and say, hey, look at me, I'm Lee Povey, I'm fucking amazing. I can walk into a group and go, what am I going to learn today? What do I get to take away from this?
I think we've hit something here that I really want to make this the focus and not go too much further with what we're talking about, for that reason, which is that notion of how are you assessing you? How are you assessing you? How are you putting you under the microscope? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the one only assessing, that you can obviously have other people like coaches, like members of your team, whatever it may be. But a place I just want to encourage folks to start here is just listening to some of these key terms that we've used, such as, you just use a word in adaptation. It's a word that I love. I use, obviously comes from the world of sport too, but one's ability to adapt, one's ability to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be intuitive, to take initiative, to unlearn. You just talked about unlearning as much as learning. Like, these key qualities, what are you doing from maybe an auditing standpoint, whether it be weekly or monthly, however it needs to be? Maybe you needed to make it daily to really get into the habit and the awareness of it. I don't know, but how are you assessing how you're doing in these kind of areas? Is there that person in your team that you trust that you can maybe say, hey, I'm trying to work on my ability to be a little more authentic with the team and show that I'm willing to maybe show that I don't have the answers. I'm just trying to work on that with the team. Can you just keep an eye on that? Can you just tell me how I'm doing with that? And that person's in the majority of the meetings that you're in, or on the calls, or whatever it might be. Like, how can you actually be resourceful with some of these areas, that diligently you're working on as a leader? Because if you're not looking for that resource, if you're not taking that resourcing approach, if you're not willing to commit to scheduled check-ins of how you're doing, I mean, mate, there's just no way, is there? There's no way that we can really see those gains, going back to that term of the aggregation of marginal gains that we use in the first episode. We just can't see those gains as a leader if we're not willing to press pause and be intuitive and be resourceful about how we acquire how we're doing in these areas.
Yeah. There's a vulnerability in asking for support and putting yourself in positions where you can receive support. And I know in stages in my life I was not prepared for that, because I believed mistakenly that it made me lesser. Oh, I'm not capable enough if I need support from others. Now that's completely switched on its head for me. I know that I will never be the best version of me without the support and reflection and brainstorming and challenges of other people. If I cannot invite that into my world, I cannot be the best version of me, because I cannot see all of myself. I need other people to reflect stuff to me. And I was thinking, if we were talking about adaptation, and I love that you reflected, its meaning back to sport as well. What are we doing as athletes? We are putting our body under stress so that it adapts. And we can do that in a positive way or a negative way. We can overeat and our body adapts by storing more fat, right? Or we can lift heavy weights and our body adapts, as long as we give ourselves the correct rest and nutrition, to put on more muscle and to get stronger connective tissue so that we can produce more strength or more power. And I was thinking about little Steve and his big sister, and your adaptation to, and for those of you that haven't heard this, please go back. Was it episode 1 we talked about this, or episode 2?
It was early, yeah. It was definitely early.
One of the first couple of episodes, and Steve was talking about his childhood and how he had this sister that was a, super high performer at school, and the message that Steve kept getting was, you're not as good as your sister. Instead of, well, here's your areas for performance, Steve. Let's see you step into those. It was always this comparison of, you're not as good as your sister. And those adaptive behaviors that you had to take on from that which now you're having to unlearn and do differently to be the best version of yourself. You know, my learning that my worth was based on my physical performance and my cognitive performance. You know what my worth is based on? How I make other people feel. That's what I'm really good at, is supporting other people in being the best versions of themselves and how they feel about themselves and what they're truly capable of. That's where I feel that I really excel. And the rest of it is this adaptive mechanism from childhood that I just need to let go of because it gets in the way. If I need to keep showing you how smart I am, how does that empower you? It doesn't. I don't need to do that. And when I can recognize that and let go of that, I can really step into what I am truly capable of, which is being this person who has this huge heart and very loving, and being able to challenge people from that place, which is a gift. Not everybody can do that. You know, there's lots of very loving people in the world, and there's lots of very challenging people in the world. There's not so many that combine the two of, I'm giving you this feedback because I believe in you and I want the best for you, and I'm going to give you the feedback that other people aren't prepared to give you. Often that comes from a space of, I'm going to show you how dumb you are and I'm going to show you how smarter I am than you. And that's not where it comes from with me when I'm in my healthy version of myself. And maybe this is kind of where we pause here and reflect on what we're taking away from today, Steve. I'm curious, what are you taking away from today yourself? And what's one thing you would like our audience to take away from today?
I think for me, the immediate one that jumped out was, I'm glad that you brought it back around. It's just this notion of the unlearning. You know, there's a great quote that I don't know who, again, I'm equally as pathetic as recalling quotes or whoever it was that, you know, it says there's what we know, there's what we know we don't know, and then there's what we don't know, you know, and that was pretty much the quote. And I think it was like a mayor of New York or something like that. Anyway, someone's gonna fact check me and be like, you couldn't have been more wrong.
Please do,
anyway,
fact check us.
Please do.
All fact checking is welcome.
But yeah, it's one of my favorite things to tell a new client though too when we get started. I just, you know, just sit down with them and say, listen, there's so much you already know, and I'm not here to tell you what that is because I'm not the expert in the room. There's probably a few things that you already know that you don't know that you want to try to figure out, and that's fine too. But I'm telling you right now, the best work that we're going to do is going to be the stuff we don't know. That's where that's where the good stuff, the fun stuff, the challenging stuff, that's where it's all going to come from. And so often it requires us to unlearn, to have those breakthrough pivotal moments where we actually do see something for the first time that otherwise, had we not done that work, we could never have possibly become aware of it. So that's that desire to unlearn and be curious about going into the unknown. Like I cannot encourage people to consider how you might do that enough.
Yeah. I love the Dunning-Kruger model. So very quickly, for those that don't know it, the model basically says the less we know about the subject, the more confident we actually tend to feel about the subject. Because we don't understand how much more nuance and how much more there is to learn. Then we get to this kind of middle ground where we start to understand how much more there is to learn, and now we start to feel less confident because we're like, oh my God, this subject is so much bigger than I thought it was. Now suddenly we've learned more, we actually understand the subject better, yet we feel less confident. And then the end of this bell curve is where we get to the point where we're an expert and we actually really do understand it and we know how much there is to learn on stuff. And I was working with a coach, sports coach, way back in the day, and I was coaching this athlete, and there was another coach that was causing both of us problems. And he very kindly said, look, Lee, this other coach, they just don't know how much more there is to know. So their knowledge is limited. So they're given advice from a place of limit, and they're not realizing how much more, in this case, how much more I knew about track sprinting. So of course they feel threatened because they don't know how much more there is to know. And I think you're completely right. What I want people to take away from this is there is so much more for you to know about yourself. Once you really become an expert on yourself, it's much easier to be an expert on other people and to be more effective. However, that journey starts with you. If you don't know yourself, what that means is you don't know how you show up in relationships. If you don't know how you show up in relationships, you don't know how to be the most effective version of yourself in those relationships. You have to understand yourself first. You have to understand the adaptive mechanisms and behavioral stuff that you've taken on in your life that will show up in your relationships. Because if you don't, you can't change it to be more effective. And that's what we're challenging you, right? That's what we're asking you to do in our coaching, in this podcast, in the way that me and Steve walk through the world. There's these huge opportunities for you to be more effective. And that effectiveness is with other people, it's in your relationships, and it's with yourself. You know, how many of us have these dreams, right? I want to do this, yet we keep taking poor choices, right? I want to lose 10 pounds. Yeah, I'm picking up donuts every day. Both things don't work with each other. What's the reason? What's the mechanism that is allowing you, encouraging you to go and pick those donuts up? How does that serve you? Let's look at that. And then we can get to, okay, now how are you going to lose the 10 pounds? Because you're not going to lose it if you're eating donuts every day. So we've got to figure out what's causing that in the first place, take that away, work on that to then get to the second part. And it's the same thing as a leader. What's causing you to show up and be threatened when your staff come up with ideas, or to believe it's your job to have all of the answers and be the smartest person in the room? If we figure that out, what's the root behind that? How does that serve you? How does it protect you in the world by being the smartest person in the room? You can then take that shield off. You can take that cape off and you can throw it away and go, I don't need to be that person anymore. And then you can watch how your relationships will change. So my encouragement is, what is the stuff that you don't know about, to follow on from Steve, what's the stuff you don't know about yourself yet, and how are you going to get support in figuring that out? Because that's where the next leap in your performance comes from. When you understand yourself at the highest level, when you understand your own motivations, your fears, what excites you, what depresses you, what gives you energy, what takes your energy away, you can lead a much more effective, thoughtful, and chosen life.
On that note, on that wonderful piece of direction, although I have to bring this to the listeners' attention, is that if you didn't know, Lee's New Year's resolution this year was to not eat confectionery. So the reason why he's choosing stories around donuts is because he can't get it off his mind. So just to give you some of the science there, just so you understand, it's
sugar.
You know, but it's
what's the Homer Simpson one? Donuts.
Donuts. I love it. This is such good stuff. And again, I said that I'm going to try to start being disciplined about this at the end of our episodes. Feedback, folks. We love our feedback. Those of you that are part of our community on the Founders Catalyst on LinkedIn, that's a great place for you just to drop some insights around what you're taking from these episodes, maybe what else you would like to see. Is there something we're missing when we cover these topics? Do you need us to explore certain areas more? Do you need more examples? All this stuff. We are very coachable coaches. And so with that being said, don't hesitate to reach out and drop us any feedback. And unless you've got anything else for the lovely listeners, Lee, I'll leave it to you to say to wish them well and to say our goodbyes.
I have one more thing. Something me and Steve have spoken about that we want to bring to this podcast is we want to bring other people in as guests. The guests we're looking for are founders. So you have to be a founder or an executive at a startup. And we would like you to come on and talk about your journey, talk about the things that have gone well, talk about the challenges you've had. And if you're open to it, we will probably have a section of that where we will coach you on an issue. We want people to understand what coaching is, and understand what we do, what this world of high performance is. And I think it's vital, and we think it's vital for other people to hear your story. And obviously we have guests lined up already because we work with a lot of founders and executives in these companies. If you're listening to this, we also want to hear from you. So if you want to be on this podcast, you have a story to share about how you built your business, the challenges you've been through, we would love to hear that ourselves, and we'd love to share that with our listeners. And on that note, thank you. We really appreciate you listening. Please share this with other people in your circle. When we say we're about community, we're not saying that for the sake of it. We're saying it because we genuinely want a better world. And for this podcast to be better, we need more people to hear it. We need people to share it. We need the feedback, as Steve says. We need your engagement. We're not doing this because we like hearing ourselves talk. We're doing this because we want to support you.
See you next time, folks.
Thanks, Steve.